perfect place to start. So let me just log into demo 1 second, share my screen. Can you guys see my screen okay?
Yeah.
Lovely. Perfect. So we will start at the top. The first thing that we're going to talk about is obviously we discussed the creation of nodes, which you guys have started having some practical experience with creating your nodes, etc. So a big part of nodes when we are setting up the system is something called node zones. And what a node zone is basically a collection of nodes. So a node zone is a collection of nodes which are used to perform certain functions. So we'll talk on how we can set these up and what these mean a little bit more. So first of all, I'm just going to open up one of your guys' test organizations, just so I can show you first of all where these node zones are set up on the node, if that makes sense. So if we open up an own company, I'm going to use yours, Chloe. Is it a child? Is it? Oh, there we go. Lovely. So I'm just going into one of your sites here, Chloe. Then I'll go into the internal tab where we set up all of our nodes, expand out our intake area. And if I click edit, you can see that there's a tab here called zones. And when we open up zones, slowly, you can see we have some node zones in here. But we'll go into where these are set up and what they mean. So here we've got intake issue to final assembly, intake issue to high care prep, and intake issue to low care prep. So the important thing to remember about node zones is that the child will inherit the node zones of the parent, which I remember we did speak about last time. So LR receiving will automatically inherit the node zones of LR intake. It's parent node, it's parent. Yeah, it's parent. And the same with all of the others. So that's just an important thing to remember. You are able to manually add more to the child ones, but just with the way that the system functions, the reason it inherits is because it needs to inherit, if that makes sense. So yes, so that's a really important point to remember. So when we are looking to set up a node zone, remember where to do it. It could be under WMS actually, just bear with me while I recall where I find it. Warehouse location. So yes, node zones. To actually administer node zones yourself, I'm going into our WMS menu, into maintenance functions, warehouse locations, and then opening up node zones. So the screen that appears is the screen where you can search for existing node zones or add new ones. And as you can see, we've got a lovely list of existing node zones here. So the ones that we mentioned in Chloe's site that she set up was we had intake issue to final assembly, intake issue to high care prep, and intake issue to low risk prep. So we'll have a look at intake issue to low risk prep just as an example. So I'll hit edit to look at the details of that node zone. And here we can see, sorry, Kate, sorry, Claire, did you ask something?
Yeah. Is there a set of node zones that are standard? Are there when the system is set up, or
no? So there are
by somebody.
They've all been set up by somebody, but there is a standard set which you will have to set up, if that makes sense. So no, as soon as you get a brand new blank system, it's not there. But there are set ones which we use. Intake issue to somewhere being a set that we will pretty much always use. But yeah, from a new system perspective, there'll be nothing there. It's something that we have to set up. Lovely. So this is our node zone maintenance screen here. So as you can see, we've got the name of the node zone, also got the ability to add a description and a sequence number. That sequence number only controls how it shows in the list. It doesn't control actual function in the system, so don't worry too much about that. And then this part, which we will talk about next time because we haven't covered it yet, Claire, is stock booking type. So we would select a stock booking type for that node zone from the list, but that is something a little bit more antiquated, which we'll go into in more detail. For now, we'll just stick to node zones. A code, you can also have a short code added to it. if you want, but that, again, that's not a mandatory field. Zone purpose, again, not a mandatory field, but you can add a zone purpose. So site definition, issue, or printing is the examples that we have here in demo. And parent, again, not a required field, but we do have the option to add a parent node zone to a node zone. Again,
if they're not mandatory, but you can add them, what's the purpose of adding them?
So that depends on the node zone. So there will be situations where a node zone would have to have a parent node zone. Sorry, bear with me, it's a mouthful. As in a node zone may, so a node zone contains lots of nodes which perform a certain function. So say if there was a node zone called intake, there could be lots of node zones which you see, this is where it gets confusing, because in practicality, there will be somewhere and there will be a reason why we've set these fields up. There will be functionality for a client somewhere that's needed this. But in terms of what I'm looking at right now, it's hard to show you an example because we don't have it. we don't have it here. But what I'll do is I'll take an action to
Just
go,
thinking
where do
from
I
a
open it? I'll take
documentation
action
point of
to
view, we need to understand somebody that's seeing that for the first time. If I say to them, this is not mandatory, but you could add it, they'll want to know why they should be adding it.
Yes, but this is so I'm giving training to you guys, so you guys aren't going to be at that point yet, but we'll get into that. It's
I've got to think about
yeah,
writing the documentation from that perspective, and that's
yeah,
what
yeah,
to know.
yeah. Oh no, absolutely. I get what you mean, but we'll get onto more practical views of that later on. It's hard to know how much detail to go into when we hit these touch points, because technically this would be our second session. Obviously, what we're revisiting now, this would be our second session. So we just want to make sure that we're starting with a light touch, and then we'll go into the specifics. So obviously last time I believe you guys gave me feedback and said you wanted to look at the system from a recommendation perspective. So recommended use of the system rather than client specifics. So for now, I'll stick to the script of recommended use. So zone purpose and zone parent is client specific. It's not necessary to make the system function, if that makes sense. But node zones, however, in their entirety are required. And stock booking types are also required. And we'll go into those in more detail. I'll say in our next session, but you know what I mean. Next time. But I will take an action anyway. Just so I can give you guys an example, because it will make it easier to explain when we get to it anyway. So there we go. Taking that. Yes. Again, we wouldn't have touched on that bit yet, Claire. Oh no, you were here for characteristics, weren't you? No, you weren't. No. Okay. Yeah. We'll have to revisit that recording. But characteristics can also be added to a node zone, is what I'm getting at here. And the same with pack characteristics for a zone as well. I will presume that. Oh, positive release temperature, yeah. But we'll go into characteristics again, because obviously last time there was a few points that we had to revisit. Yes, and then we've also got this process button here. So this becomes quite important because node zones need to have processes set to them to make sure they function as expected. So in this case, we've got intake issue to low risk prep. So what processes do we need to make sure are enabled for this node zone? And as we can see here, production issue, we need to be able to do production issue because we're doing intake issue to low risk.
Oh yes, there's quite a few on there, isn't there? It's like bulk stock transfer, goods
Yeah.
received.
So yeah, and we can have another look. We can have a look at another example when we look at some of the other node zones if you want. But obviously, in this case, this is a node zone which has been set up for intake issue to a to a preparation area, low risk prep. Therefore, we must make sure that the production issue process is set to allow that activity to take place. Yes. So that's our node zone maintenance menu. But what I'll do is I'll show you another example. So another thing we had was high care prep issue to final assembly. So this would be, we've got a high care product in preparation, and now we need to take it to final assembly. So it's all put together before it goes somewhere else. So a node zone has been set up for that. And as you can see here, we've got some more details. Somebody's decided to add a description this one to give us a bit more information. So issue to final assembly from immediate feeding locations to final assembly. Again, not required, but can help with the administration and maintenance of nodes and node zones. And again, we can see that the stock booking type here is different. And like I said, I do have an action from our previous one to go into a bit more detail about stock booking types because they are important. And if we have a look on the processes here, we can see in this case, we've got production issue because now it's not, you know, we're still having to do the same of it's going from a prep area to a production area. So we still need to be able to do a production issue. But in this case, we're going from prep to production, which means the production process also needs to be selected, if that makes sense. Because this is a high care prep to final assembly, which is production. So we're going from prep to production. So not only do we need to be able to do a production issue, we also need to be able to do production processes. Lovely. So now we'll talk a little bit about what those node zones mean. So we have node zones, and then like we talked about right at the beginning, we assign node zones to nodes. There we go. So like when I was having a look at Chloe's site and I went into her low risk intake area, back into the zones tab, and we can see what node zones that specific node is a part of. So that's how those things connect. And it's basically to make sure that a node is able to complete its required functions. So, you know, when we'll talk about those processes, for LR intake, we know that it can now do an intake issue to final assembly because production issue has been selected. And wrong way around, production issue has been selected and production has been selected. And then for these two, we've got production issue, which has been selected. So it's just to make sure that we group nodes together by their required functions. And that's the overall message is yeah. So talking from a support perspective, the issues, again, it'd be rare to see them, but not impossible to see them, is say if a client says, you know, oh, we've set up a new site, may happen. We've set up a new site as per our documents or instructions training, whatever it is. And for some reason, I'm not able to issue stock into this area. And there's a few things that you could check. You would check that the process is set up correctly on the node zones, and you'd also make sure that node zones have been assigned, along another host of things. But that's a small collection of things that this could be applicable for. But obviously, the amount of things that could be wrong in that case are huge. But obviously, just for the purpose of what we're looking at now, there are some things that you could potentially check. So do we have any questions? Chloe, I know that you like to see it. Would you like me to show you it in the new system as well, just to see how it looks in the new UI? Or
yeah,
I can show you that as well again. Yeah, just so you guys, when it comes to any projects which are happening now, apart from newlyweds are the exception, but Tofu, Laffey Road, Fairfax, all of them will be given the new UI. So it'll make sense that you guys know what that looks like. Newlyweds, however, they'll still be on the old one, but it does make sense to have a look at it. So I'll just log into the Hilton Sandbox so you can, there we go, so you guys can see what that kind of screen and stuff looks like. Like we said, the function of the screens are exactly the same.
Yeah.
It just looks different, but it's good to get you know what you're looking at basically. So we'll have a look at the node zones on the site first. Ooh, now then. Tofu. very slow, sorry. And this is why when Ernie does demos to clients, he asks Andy Richardson to add more resource to make it look really quick. So yeah, if we go to our internal tab, like you said, we're seeing the new look and feel here, the light blue, the evolved blue, the whites and the greys, all very nice. We'll open up Alex's top node that he's set up. He's put his intake in prep, so let's have a look at that. And we have a look at zones, so we can see the zones which have been set up here and how that looks on the new UI. We've got intake to production and intake to prep, so just the same as you had, Chloe, but obviously the slight difference in the one that you set up is because the node zones were based off Bradgate, so they have like high care and low care. So you had those two additional as well as intake to production, or final assembly as it's called there. So yeah, and then I'll just show you the menu as well where you can set it up within WMS. Again, I think the little icons are good now as well. They probably need changing some of them, but I think it's good that we've got icons. It makes it a lot like more user friendly, I think. But functions, warehouse locations, and node zones. And here we go. So we can see our list here. We can see our search menu, our add, and then if we just click edit to open one of these up, we can see where we can go about adding the details. And another thing, I think this menu looks a lot cleaner than the last one for selecting your processes. I think that looks much better. So yeah, let me just shuffle this away somewhere. There we go. So that's how it looks on the new UI. So does anybody have any questions about node zones before we move on to temperature zones? I know it's a lot. Node zones is still something that confuses me a little, but it does make sense when you see it in application, which we'll get to, because I am aware that obviously I'm giving you guys a lot of theoretical information, and until you get to moving things throughout the system, it might not 100% make sense yet. But we'll get there. We'll get there. Lovely. So if we're all good, I will move on to temperature zones. So to set up temperature zones, I believe it is under our setup menu. Just need to remember where. Yes, so in our setup menu under companies base data, so this is where things can sometimes get confusing because you'll see base data under lots of different menus, so just excuse me for forgetting where that one was. But yeah, so under companies base data, we have this section here called temperature zones. So you guys will know this from any other places you've worked. If you've ever worked with food in retail, Chloe, I know you have, or anything to do with that, you'll know how absolutely essential temperatures and temperature control are around food manufacturing, food retail, any part of it. So this is where we set up our temperature zone. So as you can see in this example, I'll stick to, so some bits are in here for testing, but I'll stick to the recommended system basics, you know, like is best. So we have ambient, we have chilled, and we have frozen. The other ones are for testing purposes, so we won't worry too much about those. The actual practical application is the same. So we'll just talk about the ones that we could make use of. So we'll have a look at ambient first. So as you can see, somebody set up our temperature zone of ambient. And again, Claire, just to let you know, when we get a blank system to configure, these will not be here. We have to set these up as well. And again, it's good in a way because the per client, some of the details could be different. Even though there are industry standards, there could be some difference. So we're looking at ambient here. So of course we have the type, which is just a temperature zone. I mean, we already knew that. That's grayed out where we're setting it up. Again, we're back to the sequence number. Again, this will just control where it shows in the list and doesn't actually change any function later on. And when I say the list, I mean the list of temperature zones from that view that we just looked at. So we've got the name, of course, ambient, and also the option to add a description. Again, that is not a required field, but you can add it. Then we've got the code. Again, we've got ambient, frozen, and chilled. So we'll go into codes in a bit more detail another time, because that's actually, I believe, that's a general parameter. And you know how I said last Friday that general parameters is quite a complex thing, and we'll cover that further down the line. But the codes are basically set up same as the names here. So we've got chilled, ambient, and frozen. It's just an easier way to grab the word. The word's set up the same, and it's the code that will reflect throughout the system. But as long as it's assigned to the zone, shouldn't be a problem. Then we've got parents. Again, like we discussed before, it's not mandatory, but for some reason it exists, which means there could potentially be a client need for it. Again, that one practical example I could think of, for example, is tofu deal with tuna and also frozen meat. So they could have a temperature zone called frozen, and then they could have child. So they've got tuna frozen or frozen, because tuna needs to be frozen at a much lower temperature than any other fish and any other meat. So we could have a child called frozen tuna, or something like that, and we could set the zone temperature as lower, but it'd still be part of the temperature zone frozen. There we go. So that's one practical application I can think of in this case, but I haven't personally seen it used yet, but it doesn't mean that it isn't. I just haven't seen it. But yes, so we've got the option for parent. Again, that's not a required field. Then we've got recipe level, which we will talk about tomorrow because we're going into items and recipe levels, item maintenance, all that sort of stuff. But we can select a recipe level from here. So in this case, it's been set as raw material. But again, if an organization is receiving ambient raw material, so things like spices, crumbs, anything which can be kept at room temp, then it'd be a raw material. But for example, however, they may produce fish and have to store it at frozen, but they've already produced it, so it could come under finished product or packaged product, for example, frozen. So yeah, we just got to keep that in mind, that we do have recipe levels, but we'll talk about that more tomorrow when we go through item maintenance. Then this is where we set the zone temperature. So for some reason, this ambient has been set to 0. I don't know what it is. I don't know what it actually is. It's probably more like what, Connor, Chloe, do you guys have an idea? Ambient? That's like
above 8 degrees, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's what?
Above 8 degrees.
Anything above 8 degrees is classed as
Chilled
ambient.
is 1 to 8, and anything above 8 is ambient.
Yeah, so we'll put that down as 8 as like a minimum. And then we also have a couple of other options here. Colour, that's just how the colour of that temperature zone shows throughout the system. Again, not mandatory, and I've never seen it used, but it's just an option. That's more of a user interface thing, so they can see. So say if you wanted frozen, you could make it blue. So it's clear throughout the system what's what. And we also have positive release before move. So that just means that there is a workflow that happens, which means somebody has to approve the moving of things within this temperature zone. Again, I've never seen it used specifically in this sense. Usually positive release would happen maybe a little bit further down, so on the item itself, on allergens or things like that, but the option is there. If it was to be for a whole temperature zone, you could have a positive release before move. So basically, before we can move this anywhere, we have to say, yeah, we're fine. Yes, and again, our lovely Carax button is at the top, so we also have some characteristics which we can set up. It looks like, let's just have a look at config. Yeah, no, we don't need to worry about that. None has been set up here. Again, I could take a look to see if there is any practical application of characteristics for these temperature zones, but right now, no. But I'm not sure if people do use it somewhere. But the option's there. Like when we were talking about characteristics last week, and we said it's all about making the system as tailored and configurable as possible for the client, that characteristics button is everywhere. So yeah, we can make it as tailored as possible. And then we're back to our lovely process button. Nothing's been filled in here because it is just a temperature zone. But we'll talk about that as well when we go into item maintenance tomorrow, because it's a big part of that stuff. But for now, we've got our temperature zone. It's where we define, obviously, our temperature, and we have other options that we can have here. Like we said, we could have different recipe levels for a temperature zone. And we've obviously got this positive release, which is a potential if it was needed. Yes.
It's beautiful. because you clicked on another button across the top, do we need to
Yeah, that's because I went into process before I'd hit
so
update.
we have to
So
it's not an auto save, we have to press the
no. So yeah, this is a bit confusing. It's more of a development one. There is some pages which auto save when you do some things, but not others. And this is obviously one that doesn't. Yeah, but
I've just double checked as well. Ambient temperatures are different to food. So I thought ambient was 8 to 25 degrees.
Okay.
It's not with food, it's 15 to 25. So it's different to medication.
Okay, lovely. Well, 50. Oh, that makes more sense, I suppose. That's closer to room temp, innit? Like 15 to 25-ish. Lovely. And yeah, just to give you another example, we have frozen here. Obviously, the same situation, but obviously we've got our -20 temperature here, and then chilled, which is like what? It's low. Yeah, 5 in this particular example. Whether or not that's right, it is just a demo system, so I don't know if people have just been playing with numbers.
Five
Again,
is like the maximum for chilled, I think, from what I
5
remember.
max.
5.
Yeah, should be lower than 5.
Let's take it
Yeah,
off to
2's fair.
But yes, so these are our temperature zones. And as you can see, people have been doing a bit of testing. So we've got dry aging and blast and things like that that we're just still testing. So don't worry too much about those. Obviously, the most common ones that you will see and that you'll hear of will be your ambient, your frozen, and your chilled. Yes. So the reason that these are not standard in the system, so when you get like a blank system, they're not just all there set up, is because the zone temperatures, even though, like I said, are industry standard, they could differ slightly by client. So an ambient area for them could be slightly lower than average or slightly higher than average, and they just need to make sure that they record that, basically. So where temperature zones become important is they are reflected in multiple places in the system, but you would have also seen them when you set up your nodes and your companies. Wait, where did I just go?
You're on the wrong one. That's the second
I
one.
was about to say,
First
I was
one.
about to say, where have I just gone here?
I replicated a school.
That was it. This one? It's this one, isn't it?
The first one.
Nope, that's the child. This one.
Test site one, yeah.
Test site one. There we go. Yep. So where this comes into play is I'm trying to think of. Here we go. We've got HC prep chill preparation area. If we have a look, we can see that the temperature zone for this node has been set as chilled. So yes, that is the application of it when you're setting up your node. So of course, different locations will have different temperatures, and that is where the temperature zones feed in to when you're setting up your nodes and your own company setup. Excellent. So any questions on temperature zones? We good? We feeling it? Excellent. So now this is a bit that we did cover a little bit on Friday, but we will go through again for Claire's and Kate's benefit as well. Sorry, I'm looking past my energy drink can here. It's like right in the way of my screen, so I'm like dodging it. So now we'll go back to nodal links. So we did touch on this a little bit, but just to give you a general definition, nodal links in the system are used to link nodes together. And their main purpose is to allow the movement of stock from one node to another node. So again, Claire, when we get a brand new blank system, none of these are there. And they are a pain to set up and they take a while to set up. So I believe in the past, Joe has spoken with developers and has been able to get them to potentially write a script, but again, that's on a client by client basis, to be able to upload them in bulk. But yes, when I was doing Fairfax, I set them up all manually. And I think, you know, yeah, in the first instance, that is what you do just to test the movement of stock from the nodes you've set up between, I say between, but from one to another, because we'll get onto that. So where we go to set up nodal links is we're back in our WMS menu and we go to our nodal links page. So we've got the option to search and add. We can also use the search criteria at the top. So you can search for existing nodal links by selecting the source node and searching. So if we go to HG Prep, and we can see for HG Prep where we can move things to, or you could search by destination node, or you could just look at them all, and there'll be a lot of them. Here we go. So these have all been set up previously. So let's talk a little bit about how this works, and we'll try and keep it nice and simple. We'll start with, where's the best place to start? Doesn't help. Okay, so I'm going to have a look at our goods receiving area. Goods receiving area. And here we go. So the important thing to remember about nodal links is it is a one-way relationship, not a two-way relationship. So if you want stock to move to an area, but also be able to move back to an area, that's two separate nodal links. So in this case, so we've got goods receiving area. So there's one set up here from our goods receiving area to dry goods, which I presume is a dry goods storage area. So if I just open this one up, we can see how it's been set up. We've got the source node, which is goods receiving area. We've got our destination node, which is dry goods. There is an option to add an in-transit node. However, I've never seen it in application, but that doesn't mean it isn't. It is there for a reason, but at the moment there's no options to add any in-transit nodes. But right now, I can't think of any application of it that I'm aware of. Then we spoke a little bit about lead times as well. So you're able to add lead times into nodal links. So basically, in massive warehouses and factories, let's say the goods receiving area is at one side of the warehouse and you've got to walk all the way to the other side or even cross the road to get to your dry goods area. You could potentially add lead time. So how long it takes to get from one to the other in days. Again, I can think of some clients where that would be useful, but I've never seen it in practical application myself. So again, maybe if there is regular movements from one site node to another site node, but again, if we necessarily pick it up in this way, I'm not entirely sure. We will probably more likely to do like a transfer type thing, but the option is there. For if we need to, but again, that is not a mandatory field. You don't have to fill that in. There doesn't have to be a lead time. Then we have QC hold authorization level. Again, this is not a mandatory field, but again, I could think of some clients where this could be useful, where there needs to be authorization to allow the movement of stock from the goods receiving area to dry goods. So one practical application I could see is if you had a node which was QC hold. So you had an area where you kept all your QC stock, and then you wanted to be able to send it to production, send it to prep, wherever. And basically we would set up an authorization level here. So 1, 2, or 3, 1 being highest, I think, and 3 being the lowest, or is it the other way around? It could be the other way around. But basically you would just put in level 1, 2, or 3 for what level of person needs to authorize that movement. Again, not mandatory, but could be useful for some clients. And we also have a print label box. So if you wanted to print a label for when things move between our source node to our destination node. I can think of practical applications where that would be helpful, but in this case, we're not using it. And again, we have our lovely characteristics button as well, because we can even add characteristics to nodal links. As I said, you'll see that characteristics button everywhere. And again, like I said, the characteristics is just to be able to tailor the system as much as possible for client use, so they can capture and see what information they need to see all over the system in all different areas. So yes, that is an example of a nodal link. So if you were to add a new one, the screen is just the same. You would add your source node, destination node, in transit if applicable, but it's going to be none in this case, lead time if applicable, QC hold authorization level if applicable, and then select whether or not you want to print label at that point. So yes, the only thing that I can stress with nodal links is that you will not be able to move anything from one node to another node unless a nodal link is set up. So that does go to extremes. So as you can see here, we've got stuff going from the goods receiving area. Nodal link's been set up from goods receiving area to D1.1a, which to me looks like a racking location. So that will only allow it to go from goods receiving to that area, that racking location, which means you need to set one up for every single racking location that you may need to send the goods from goods receipt to. So it is just important to remember that. And the second one, of course, like I said before, it is a one-way relationship. So if for some reason you wanted to send dry goods back to goods receiving area, even though we've got one way, we'd have to create a new nodal link for the other way. Yes. So that is nodal links, really essential for allowing us to move things throughout the system. Well, I say really, it is essential. We can't move anything between an area without a nodal link being set up. So any questions on nodal links, or do we feel quite happy with that? What I will mention for Claire and Kate's benefit, because Connor and Chloe did ask me, is why that when we set up nodes, they need to have a unique reference. This is part of the reason. So if you've got two sites, let's say we're looking at Bradgate, they have Ashton Green site and Madeline Road site. They will both have, you know, goods receiving areas, but each of them needs to have goods receiving area, you know, Madeline Road, goods receiving area, Ashton Green. We need to make sure that those references are unique so it doesn't get confused when we're creating things like nodal links and things like that. So we know exactly what's going where and we don't get confused. Yeah. But yes, excellent.
Oh, Kate,
So,
could we see an example of setting up a nodal link on one of somebody's company? It doesn't have to be mine, it could be somebody else's, but can we see an example of it being set up so we can have a look at its use, if that makes sense?
So you mean you just want to create a new one with your nodes in it, you mean?
Yeah, or just
Because I
use
won't
what
be
we've
able to.
got.
I was about to say I won't be able to show you. Well, I will be able to. No, I won't be able to show you movement through the system yet.
Okay, no, that's fine.
Because there's lots more stuff that we need to set up, like items
Right.
and stuff, which we'll look at tomorrow. But I've got nothing to move yet in your company, Chloe.
Okay, I'm jumping ahead.
But I think you already set up your nodal links, didn't you?
I think I
Or is that what you're
attempted
asking?
it. Yeah, could we attempt it on mine?
Yeah, so if we click add, so this is where it's going to get a little bit confusing. So I'm just going to duplicate my tab just so I can look at the references of Chloe's nodal links. These lovely unique references. So if we open up Chloe's internal tab, I'm just going to expand her site, have a look at her intake area, and let's say no, bad example. No, well, you will use intake area and transfer area. So let's just say we want to move things from low risk receiving. Sorry, this is just my brain. Sorry. Okay, let's just, yeah, transfer is a bad example. But no, we're going to use it. So we are going to move things from, let's make it easy, low risk receiving to our transfer corridors. So we want to move it from receiving to a transfer corridor. That's the only movement that's going to be enabled here. So we would have a look for, don't need to remember, is we would find low risk receiving, and it was LR receiving, wasn't it? L. This is where the unique bits get LR.
Sorry, Kate.
No, it's fine. It's just because it's the data in here isn't helpful for what we're doing. LR. Oh my gosh. Which spelling is it? Is it that one?
The I before the E and the I before E, proper way.
I before E. So it's this one.
Yeah.
Lovely. To TXFR transfer corridors. That should be easier to find. I say TXFR transfer corridor, I think it is. And again, this is where it gets confusing, where we've got lots of people added data in one place. But as you can see, the description is transfer corridors TXFR. So we got TXFR. Gosh, this is where it gets there. There we go. So yes, now we've set up a link between low risk receiving and our transfer corridor. We're not going to add any in-transit nodes. Lead time, we're just, I can imagine it's probably just next door. And then QC hold authorization, I mean, we're just moving things from our receiving area to our transfer corridor, so I don't think that we should need it. And then we will just click update, and you can see it says record updated up here, but we can see that it's now created our nodal link. So if we go and have a look at it, oh gosh, now I need to find you said I4E. LR receiving, oh gosh. Now I'm trying to find it. Okay, let's do destination node. Surely at this point that's going to be easier just because of all the LR receivings we've got. So, oh, now then, that's interesting.
Ooh.
I've just noticed what I've done here. I clicked add, didn't I?
Yeah, it was saved. It's not there though.
Oh, just bear with me. That might be. But this might have been a me thing. Bear with me. LR receiving. Oh, it's blowing all of mine there. Receiving.
Go down.
540.
There you go.
Yeah. TRX. Date. Record updated. Okay. It's definitely there. Surely I've not just stumbled upon a bug. Surely I haven't. But you never know. Nodal link maintenance. Exit. LR. See it up. Let me just check that it's not added it here. It hasn't. Okay, because that's not the right reference. Where's that gone?
If you refresh it, it shows up because I've just found it.
Oh, thank God.
Just,
Oh, do I need to go in the screen and back out the screen?
Yeah.
Taking a note of that. Because when basically I've created it and when I re-hit search, it should refresh the search.
Right.
Well, yes, we've created one there.
Thank you, Kate.
So now we can move stock from Chloe's low risk receiving area, yes, to the transfer corridor.
Yeah.
But not to the transfer corridor back to low risk receiving. That would have to be a new nodal link.
Yeah. No, it's just one way.
Yes. Any questions on nodal links? No. Cool. Lovely. So in that case then, our next and final part was node position. So this is something that Connor keeps bringing up about the racking. So we'll have a look at where we can look at and modify node position. So if I open up our WMS menu, go back down to maintenance functions, warehouse locations, and then open up node positions. We will open up our node position maintenance screen. Again, we have the option to add and search, and we also have some search criteria. We can search for a specific node, or we can hit search to view all of our node positions. So this is particularly helpful for racking, but it could also be used for freezer locations, chilled storage locations, should I say, freezer storage locations. So we think about a warehouse, obviously lots of different racks to be able to store material, and as you guys will know, just for your day-to-day life as well as in the workplace, certain things cannot be stored above other certain things, and part of the element of how we can control this is through node relative positions. So this is kind of the step before. This is just saying what is where. So for example, we have a node here, which is a racking location, which is A1.1A. And then we have the adjacent node, which is A1.1b. So basically what this node position that has been set up is saying is that this node is above this node. And then we've got obviously this node here, set up here. This node is then above that node. Above. No, I'm doing it the wrong way around. Above. But yeah, you see what I mean. So you can see how the racking has been positioned. So you can see that this spot in the rack is above this spot in the rack. And again, this is a pain to set up because you have to set them all up like this. And basically it's just saying what part of the rack or what node, what node is above or below another node. So it's just basically to paint out when we're talking about racking references, where that is. So if it's above or below the other one. So if we go to add one, it might make a bit more sense. So we would select the node. So let's go O1, A01. So that is our node on the rack. And then we could say the relative position, is it above or below the adjacent node? So if we say above, O1, A01 is above O1, A02. And then if we hit update, again, it's not going to show straight away. We know that now. Oh, it's thinking about it. There we go. Oh, you see how this is confusing because that one just appeared straight away. But yes, and then that is how we create node positions or node relative positions. Is basically saying this area is above or below this area, and the practical application of this is going to be mainly in areas of storage. So racking areas in a warehouse, racking areas in a freezer, racking areas in a chiller. And again, this could be client specific. It could depend how much traceability they want to have. So we could have clients which have a freezer and some will want to know exactly what rack. They will have references for every single spot on a rack and they want to know what's where, or some will go, it's in the freezer. It completely depends. Obviously, best practice is to make sure that we have locations referenced on a rack and we can see what's above and below where. And again, that when we get onto item maintenance tomorrow and we talk a bit about sensitivities and things like that, we'll talk a bit more about why that's important, because obviously you can't have raw meat above cooked meat, or you can't have, you know, allergens above non-allergen material or below non-allergen material, things like that. But we'll get onto that when we talk about sensitivities tomorrow. But you can see, are you happy with the application of node positions, why that's used? Yeah, okay. Good. Well, perfect. So that was everything that we wanted to recover. So we've gone through our node zones, our temperature zones, our nodal links, and our node positions. So unless anybody has any questions, I think that was all.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Kate.
You said tomorrow. Can I have an invite?
Yes, you can. I can
Thank you.
include you in these
You can't.
sessions now. So. No, you can't. Not invited, Kate.
That's all I wanted. And I'm running outside now before. Ow!
Lovely. I will send that over. We are going to be in the boardroom, but if you can't make it in, Kate, that's not a problem. We can dial you in.
I'm definitely
say that.
not.
Camera doesn't
Tomorrow.
work, but yes. But yes, it does say. There we go. That's with you. Yeah, sorry about that, Kate. I can make sure you're included on those sessions as well. I think we didn't want to drown you with newlyweds.
It's fine. I might not make it, but it's always good to have it, you know.
Yeah, sorry, Claire, we can't hear you. I know you're trying to speak, but we can barely hear you.
I know, but I don't know why, because my microphone's right up, so I don't know why. Can you make sure you record it and the screen?
Of course, yes.
I'm in with Joe tomorrow, hopefully.
Yes, so it'll just be the way I have to do it might be a bit different because we didn't really realise how bad the boardroom camera issue was. Actually, just give me 1 second. Let me just I'm just going to stop the recording so I'm not just